Let's check in with the legal panel in San Francisco. Our former San Francisco Assistant DA Jim Hammer and defense attorney and former prosecutor Michael Cardoza, and here in Washington, defense attorneys Ted Williams and Bernie Grimm. Bernie, Ted said as he sat down he thought that you're going to be arrested by week's end. I don't think so, but...
Yeah, I mean, if it was in the States, I mean, we all know the law pretty quick. Just based on this statement alone, he participated in disposing the body, which here would be accessory after the fact to murder.
Well,
but it's hard.
You first got to show it's a murder.
Right.
I mean, no matter how suspicious we are, you still got to prove it's a murder. It could just be a drug overdose.
Sure. You can't be convicted based on your own statement. And I don't see where the forensic evidence, since there's no body recovered and there's no hammer or gun, supports what he says.
Yeah, you know, there's a great deal of wishful thinking on my part, but I do believe that there's a lot of political pressure that's going to be brought to bear on ARUBA and on those judges, and I do believe that there may be a possibility that he could very well be arrested, as you represented, and I think the reason for that is because of what I define as some kind of an admission that he helped dispose of a body. Now, that you can get, that's a sentence, I understand, from 6 to 9 months in Aruba.
We had Helen LaJouet on the other night, who was chief prosecutor when you were off in the South. And well, I was just going to make a crack, but it wasn't a holiday. Bernie's the one who was on the holiday. Ted had something other else. But she said that it was an offense. It was a 3 or 4 year offense, and you can't extradite back on that. I don't know if that's true. From Holland.
I don't know, but again, I think you're going to have a combination of political pressure as well as whatever they can do to bring him back to Holland. I think they want him back in Aruba.
Jim, will he be under arrest by Friday?
Well, I have to guess no. A lot is going to depend upon these judges, and I'm a bigger fan of juries than I am of judges. But having said that, the real question is, and Bernie accused me, I took it as a badge of honor, kind of, I'd prosecute anyone I thought was guilty. Having said that, I, in my heart, cannot say that he murdered this beautiful young woman. In my heart, I have to say, and based on the evidence, I have to say, this could have been an accident. That's a reasonable possibility. In light of that, I can't ethically go after this guy, even though I despise him. I think he's a despicable punk and a liar and a coward. I can't say with conviction that he committed a murder, and therefore, if they do the right thing, I think it's so far at least, unless maybe Deepak talks or somebody else talks, I think we're still stuck, Greta.
You know, Michael, if they found the body, how different things would be, because you know it's hard to think that even after this much time that there could be a clue, but maybe. And if the body is found deep enough in the water, it's possible, according to Dr. Bodden, that there may be more clues than we can imagine, having gone to law school. And we're going to, in the next segment, show the viewers this unique thing that they're doing to search for. But until that point, it's a tough case for a prosecutor, isn't it, Michael?
Oh, it's a horribly tough case. But you know, one thing that I have a lot of difficulty with here in the United States, in fact, here in the Bay Area, there's a guy by the name of Hans Reiser whose wife disappeared. They didn't find his body, and they are prosecuting him for murder in Alameda County. You know, I have a hard time with this one. I think, you know, emotionally, I say
didn't they find blood in her car, though? There was
they did find some blood in her car.
That's not a good sign. That shows a murder. I mean, that shows somebody.
Maybe not. But in this
people
case,
don't bleed all over their car, Michael, typically.
Well, look at some of the things that Joran has said in this case. One of the things that bothers me the most is he said, you know, I went home and I went to sleep. I didn't stay awake for but a second or two. Even if you believe him, what kind of personality does that? You know, even if you believe him, he says, I disposed of a body and I go home and I go to bed.
But Michael, that doesn't make a murderer.
No, I agree. Emotionally, I want him prosecuted. Factually, you're right. It's going to be horribly difficult. Bernie's right. How do you do it in this case? Do I want it done? Yes, because my gut tells me he had more to do with it than he's saying. And all of us knows that when somebody makes a statement, they always exculpate themselves, say a little bit less than their real involvement was. And that's what Joran's doing here.
Bernie, imagine being a fly on the wall when Joran calls his parents. After they,
Yeah, it's not like calling from college and saying, you know, I flunked organic chemistry. Can I switch to criminal justice? Not that it was me, but it was something Ted told me about. But at any rate, yeah, I guess in this case, his lawyers are starting to put out a defense that he's a chronic liar, so therefore he can't be believed. So, and that he may have been high at the time. So I'm a liar. I was high and I helped dispose of a body. Doesn't give you a lot of, not jury appeal, But as Cardoza noted last week, judge appeal, this case gets tried to a 3-judge panel, which is a little bit scary.
What I find troubling is the law enforcement and what they missed early on in this investigation. Well, that's a good question. What investigators down there in Aruba? They screwed this case up from the beginning. And, you know, I am not too far removed. You talked about calling his parents, but I still have my suspicions about the father.
Well, you know what I'm suspicious about is the fact that he mentions on the tape that she was shaking and suggests some sort of almost epilepsy-type description, which is the same thing that they questioned Jug, her stepfather, about back in 2005. So I'm wondering, what did the police know, and why? You know, why isn't someone investigating these police, for God's sake? Yes, Jim.
But
I would go on the limb. I would go on the limb on one theory of murder, or at least negligent homicide in this case. If I had other corroborating evidence, and we've talked about it tangentially, that he actually gave her some illegal drug, and his own admission of her symptoms are her shaking, convulsing, and foaming at the mouth when she dies.
But you know, one of the things...
Wait a second, Mike. If I've got that extrinsically, I might go on the limb actually and go after him for manslaughter.
You know what? I wouldn't do that simply because if you go after him, you lose. You can't go after him later because of double jeopardy.
He'll walk otherwise.
I would wait. But if I were Natalie's parents, I'd be going to my congressman, my senator, my governor, and saying, you know, we ought to do something. These police officers, if they knew something right after she disappeared, and that's why they asked Jug those questions, and they did nothing. I don't know, there must be some sort of...
Never prove that.
I don't know.
Shame
anyway,
on them.
Panel, thank you. Coming up, you are going on board the ship that may hold the last hope for Natalie's parents. Right now it is combing the ocean floor, the Aruban waters for Natalee Holloway. Get ready to board the boat called Persistence. And later, just hours ago,